Hey guys, it's Jason Dunn from Digital Home Thoughts, and this is the review of the Dell Adamo. This is the Admire model. So it comes in two different configurations. There's Admire, and I believe it's Desire. The Admire, which is the one I'm looking at here today, this one actually is the slightly lower end configuration. Retails for $19.99 Canadian. I'm not sure what the US price is. I'll add that in later. First, I want to, we'll boot it up here. So we've got a nice little power button up top here. Now while this is booting, there's a couple things I kind of want to point out, and one of them is just the amount of effort that Dell put into making it really customized and really nice. So if you saw that little Dell logo there for a few seconds, it's all, you know, gray and black. It matches the motif of the design of the entire device, the entire laptop. When it boots up here, you're going to see something else that's a little bit different than normal. And actually, I'll just zoom in here so you can take a better look at it. The oh, my camera's having a hard time focusing there. The boot time is actually not as impressive as you think. So this actually has an SSD drive in it. So the flash drive, 128 megabyte flash drive. Okay, so what I wanted to show you was actually just that Dell, they used a customized version of Stardock's Logon Studio. So what they did was they actually created, you know, a custom logon experience. So there's a unique background. The Windows Vista icons, you can see this little tiger here. That's not a standard Vista icon. They actually went ahead and added in a whole bunch of different profile images, which is actually pretty cool. Again, it doesn't really change the way you use the computer, but it is a nice touch. So let me just zoom out here a little bit, reposition the laptop slightly. Now, so like I said, the boot time isn't all that great. It actually, I did about 4 or 5 test boots, and they averaged out to 51 seconds. So, you know, we're commonly told, at least, that, you know, most SSD drives are super high performance, and et cetera, et cetera. And unfortunately, this device, this Samsung 128 gigabyte drive, is not that high performance, at least in terms of, you know, the boot time. So, boot time 51 seconds on average, shutdown time 12 seconds on average. So it's pretty good at shutting down, but 51 seconds and 12 seconds, that's actually not a whole lot different than like the Dell 14Z or some of the HP laptops I've looked at, so nothing particularly exciting there. So let me talk about some of my sort of experiences in using this device. One of the things that I thought was a little bit strange was that in the touchpad area, there is no, this is kind of funny. I was going to say there is no vertical scroll, but as I just tried to verify that there is no vertical scroll, it actually, I saw a little vertical scroll icon. So weird. I guess every time that I was trying to get it to work, it wasn't working very well. So that must mean maybe that I wasn't touching it quite the way I was you know, supposed to be touching it. So we'll just kind of see here. Yeah, okay. So now the vertical scroll is working. I don't know why it wasn't before, but I can't criticize Dell for this. Obviously, they did add a vertical scroll. The touchpad, actually, I should point out, it does support multi-touch. So it's hard for, okay, so right now I'm doing this, which is sort of the pinching inward motion, and watch what happens when I pinch inward. So you see how it actually shrinks it, and I can actually reverse that and do the expansion, kind of to expand outward, and that actually changes the zoom. So this is a multi-touch touchpad. There's not a whole lot of applications that take advantage of it, but Internet Explorer 8 is one of them. So it's not something that I think is a particularly awesome feature, but it is nice that Dell added it in there. Let's talk about battery life for a second. So if you looked at my unboxing video, which hopefully you did, you would have seen me, you know, go over the bottom and whatnot, and no surprises rather, there is no removable battery. So this notebook is kind of a lot like the MacBook Air, and there is no removable battery. So the battery in there is a 40 watt hour. Dell claims 5 hours of battery life, and of course that is under optimal conditions. So what kind of battery life did I actually get? Well, I did 2 tests. One of the tests I did is my Lord of the Rings battery test, where I take the extended edition of Lord of the Rings, ripped to a file, and then I try to play back that file at 100% brightness, Wi-Fi off, you know, standard the Dell recommended power savings, but I don't allow the laptop to actually go into a suspended state, and it lasted 2 hours and 43 minutes, which is no, sorry, 2 hours and 48 minutes, which is almost the entire length of the movie. I think the movie is like 2 hours and 57 minutes or something like that, you know, with credits and whatnot. So really good job in terms of surviving that, because that's, you know, obviously a very, very long movie, but that did leave me with the battery essentially completely drained. So because it doesn't have a removable battery, you're left with a quandary of, you know, essentially not wanting to maybe drain your battery that much by watching a movie, because there's no way for you to recharge it unless you're near power. So it is something to consider. My 720p WMV test. So this is where I take a 720p WMV movie trailer and I loop it back and forth. It just simply repeats. And this tests two things. It tests, again, the battery life at 100% brightness, Wi-Fi turned off, but it also sees how well it handles HD video and how hard that it hits the CPU. It was actually using 42% of the CPU when I was playing back this particular clip. Now, what that tells me, at 42% of the CPU, unfortunately, what that means is that there's no, rather, the GPU on here, the graphics processor, isn't doing a very good job at offloading the effort from the CPU. A good GPU should probably have the CPU working no harder than maybe 10 or 15%. And so, yeah, that is something to consider. It lasted 2 hours and 43 minutes. Again, pretty good. So there's not a whole lot of difference between playing back the HD content and playing back the SD content. So that's just the video clip that I was playing back. And I'll just point this out since people always seem to ask, does this have speakers? Yes. Of course it has speakers. All laptops have speakers, so please, nobody ask me if it has any speakers. It does have a webcam. I'll just zoom in up here. So this is the webcam. I believe it is it's a 1.3 megapixel webcam, and it also does have a built-in microphone. All webcams made any time in the past, 10 years pretty much, they all have built-in microphones if they're on a laptop, so you don't need to worry about that. I will point out one more thing here while we're zoomed in. This is the Dell toolbar. So this is actually some StarDock software that Dell integrated. You saw me talk about this in the video about the Dell Studio Hybrid. So it's pretty cool software. It just kind of adds kind of a slightly different way to navigate to your program. So it's nothing too special, but it is nice to have it on there. So something that I mentioned in my unboxing video, but I will just mention this again here, is that there is no optical drive. So when you look at this thing on the left and on the right, there's nothing. I mean, there's no optical drive, there's nothing. So that's not a big deal to me to lose an optical drive, but what is a big deal is the fact that there's no memory card slot. So, if you're using an SD card, or even a compact flash card, but most, cameras are using SD or maybe memory stick. But the fact that there's no memory card slot on this actually really kind of bugs me. Obviously, Dell had to make some sacrifices in order to get it to be this small and this slim, but to lose a memory card reader, I mean, if we wanted to be limited, we'd all go out and buy Macs, right? If we don't care about memory card readers. Now, I do know that they just added those in recently on some of their new MacBooks, but, for years, Apple has never had any kind of memory card reader in their laptops or even their desktops. So I think that's kind of unfortunate that Dell they weren't able to shoehorn it in there. The other thing I want to mention, I'll just shut this down here, is that as I showed in the unboxing video, everything's on the back, right? So all the ports are on the back. Now, I didn't think this was going to be an issue at first, but I got to tell you, when you're plugging in and unplugging USB like flash drives or devices, it is a big pain in the butt, frankly, to have to reach back behind and plug stuff in. I have a USB flash drive that's a little bit thicker. It's got like kind of a rubber shell on the outside, and every time I plugged it in and put down the laptop, I felt like I was kind of torquing it a bit upwards, and I was worried about it breaking or breaking something on the laptop. So, I know that Dell had to make a lot of sacrifices back here, in order to get it to be this thin, but, the sacrifices, frankly, they do make using the laptop a little bit harder with USB devices. I mentioned, the fit and finish in the last video. As you can tell, this looks pretty gross. It's got all these fingerprints on it. I really wish that Dell had made the entire front out of this surface. It does show up fingerprints a little bit, but really not a whole lot. You can tell, you can't really see the fact that I was touching it there. Whereas this thing just looks atrociously grotesque. I just really, I really dislike this. If I owned this laptop, it would drive me insane. I'd be constantly polishing this, trying to keep it clean. So, you know, so I think in this case, Dell really chose form over function. They chose to make it look pretty rather than think about how hard it would be for people to keep clean. So that's a little bit unfortunate. Not the end of the world, but if you're like me and you like to keep your stuff clean, trust me, it will drive you nuts. A couple of the other things, the core speed, or the speed of the processor rather. This particular model is 1200 megahertz is the actual speed. On the faster version, you can get all the way up to 1.4 gigahertz or 1400 megahertz. When I was using CPU-Z, which is a program they use to sort of get some feedback about the speed that the CPU is working at, it was actually benchmarking, it was showing me 1600 megahertz. So I don't frankly know why. I asked my Dell PR contact why that was, and I haven't heard back from them yet. So I'll just chalk it up to a bit of a mystery. I doubt that the CPU is doing any kind of self-overclocking. I think it might just be a bug in CPU-Z, but I can't really figure out why that is. Now, the graphics processor. So this has an Intel GS45, okay, so that is the graphics processor. Now, I fired up Call of Duty 4. I'll just start it up here, but I won't actually start playing it. I fired up Call of Duty 4, and I really tried to get it to be playable. I bumped down the graphics to 800 by 600 resolution. I turned off anti-aliasing, and I tried to get it kind of as quick as possible in terms of performance, and it's still, performance was still really slow. So you're not going to play games on this, or not most games. You might, I'm sure you can get away with something like World of Warcraft, or, you know, some games that frankly aren't all that graphically intensive. You can definitely play, you know, browser-based Flash games, etc., etc. But in terms of actual modern, you know, first-person shooters or anything that's really 3D intensive, that Intel graphics processor is just really weak, and it's just, you're really frankly not going to be playing games on this thing that are really, you know, super intensive. But like I said, it will work with World of Warcraft and other games that aren't super graphically intensive. I wanted to talk about the performance on it here, so I'm just going to punch up the system properties. So we're going to look at the system, the Windows index numbers. So these are actually the performance numbers. So when you take a look at that, you can see the processor is rated at 4.4, the memory is at 4.8, the graphics are 3.2, and the gaming graphics are 3.4, so pretty low numbers there. The primary hard disk is rated at 5.9, so it is actually quite high performance in terms of read speed. One of the things though that kind of disappointed me, and I'll just show you in here, we'll zoom down a little bit, is 2 gigs of RAM. You know, when you're paying $2,000 for a laptop, to only get 2 gigs of RAM is kind of ridiculous. You get 4 gigs of RAM in this thing if you step up to the Desire model, which is actually $2,700 Canadian. And for $2,700 Canadian, you get 4 gigs of RAM, you get a 256 gigabyte hard drive, so it's actually twice as big, and then you also get the 1.4 gigahertz processor. Now, again, as far as I know, because there's no user accessible ports on the bottom of this thing, the RAM is not going to be user accessible, right? You're going to need to actually crack open the shell to get at the RAM. Now, it might be possible to do, but it's definitely not straightforward and simple. And so I think that's, frankly, I think it's kind of ridiculous. RAM is stupidly cheap right now. Apple, they're the guys that on their MacBooks, you know, they sell these highly segmented slices of products where you know, one particular laptop will come with 2 gigs of RAM, but if you want it to come with 4 gigs of RAM, you have to move up to an entirely new laptop or pay a ridiculous upgrade fee. Dell usually doesn't work that way. Dell and HP and a lot of the, you know, the Windows manufacturers for Windows laptops and desktops, they are actually quite good at, you know, putting in lots of RAM. So I frankly don't understand why a $2,000 Windows computer isn't coming with 4 gigs of RAM. That is pretty ridiculous to me. Now, let me talk, I'm going to rattle off some PCMark Vantage numbers. So PCMark Vantage is a program that you can download. It is, I think, free to try, but if you want to, I think, do some certain things with your results, you want to pay for the full version. Now, I'm going to rattle off some numbers here, and I'll display them on the screen when I'm doing the editing on this video, and then if you want to, you can actually compare some of these numbers to your own. So the PCMark Vantage, the overall test, it scored 2,795 PCMark scores. scores. The memory suite was 1634, the TV and movie suite was 1847, the gaming suite was 2144, the music suite was 2781, the communication suite was 2592, the productivity suite was 3778, and the hard drive test suite was 10,518. So all of those scores, except for the hard drive scores, are just kind of middle of the road average. You know, again, the gaming score is a fair bit lower than a laptop that has a you know, a dedicated graphics processor. The CPU is not particularly powerful. I mean, it is a dual core CPU, but it is only operating at 1.2 gigahertz, and so that frankly drags down the performance numbers. But the hard drive test score, so it scored 10,518. Now let me give you some perspective on that. The 1 terabyte Seagate 7200.12 hard drives that I just put in a brand new desktop computer I built. These are very, very fast hard drives. They only managed to score 4,596. So the hard drive test suite, this actually scored more than twice as much. Now that's primarily because of the really, really fast read speeds. Now, and so yeah, I just kind of want to stress that. So comparing this hard drive in this laptop to the 300 gigabyte Hitachi hard drive in the Dell 14Z, which was a unit I reviewed pretty recently, let me just kind of compare it to you. In sequential read, oh, and I should mention this, I'm using a program called H2 Bench W. It is a command line kind of a hardcore hard drive benchmarking program that I found to be, it works really well and the results are really quite accurate. So that's what I'm using. Now let me just kind of compare these two. So the hard drive in the Dell 14Z versus the hard drive in this little machine. When it comes to sequential reads, it is 46% slower, the Samsung SSD drive in here. When it comes to sequential transfer, it's 23% slower. When it comes to repetitive sequential read, it is 47% slower. When it comes to sustained data rate read, it is 31% faster. So what does that tell you? That tells you that the Samsung drive that Dell put in this particular computer, it is fast at reading. It is really fast at reading, but only for sustained, sustained reads. Using it, frankly, you can't really tell a huge difference. Again, the boot time is pretty slow, so when it comes to loading the operating system, the faster read times don't really seem to help there very much at all. So even though it is an SSD drive, and that means, yeah, it's going to be more durable and you have no moving parts, frankly, I'm not super impressed with it. I think at this stage, SSDs cost so much more money and they give you so much less storage, and unless you go for a super expensive one like some of the high-end Intel drives, you don't frankly even get that much extra performance. So now, Dell may have chosen to go with an SSD in order to get this form factor working, but when I think about the SSD in this thing versus just a good quality hard drive in the like a Dell 14Z, I would pick a regular hard drive any day of the week. I know SSDs are eventually going to take over from hard drives, but they need to get a lot cheaper, a lot higher capacity, and a lot higher performance in order for it to really be worth it. So that's kind of what I thought of the Dell Adamo. So again, I really want to stress that Dell did an absolute fantastic job. I don't know if I mentioned this, but it does actually have a backlit keyboard. So these keys actually light up. There's a light sensor. I think it's probably somewhere up top here, the light sensor, and it actually detects ambient light. So you can adjust the brightness manually. So I can pull it all the way down here, and this will override the ambient light sensor. But it's got a sensor in there, so if you're on a dark plane, maybe it's the middle of the night and you're in the dark, it will actually lower the brightness. If you go into a bright room, it will actually raise the brightness up and make it as bright as it can. So again, really smart technology there. I love the fit and finish. I love the feel of the keyboard. It's got these kind of scalloped keys, which are a little bit difficult to see, but the keys actually sort of they're higher at this end. They come down a little bit and then they raise up again at this end. It makes it really nice. For typing, Dell has a great keyboard here. The fit and finish is just fantastic. I mean, Dell did a superb job on making this a gorgeous looking laptop. The question becomes, though, how much are you willing to pay, and how much, you know, performance and how much performance and how many features are you willing to lose by going with this laptop? For some people, they may look at this and say, wow, this is perfect. You know, I don't need to put in optical discs because I never use them. I want something that's thin and light and that looks gorgeous to take with me to Starbucks so I can do my email and whatever. Great. You know, if you've got $2,000 to drop and this is the laptop that you want and you're aware of the limitations, more power to you. Feel free to go out and buy it. For myself, the fact that it doesn't have a memory card slot of any kind, the fact that the USB ports are not very plentiful and they're also hard to find, or they're hard to access reasonably, that kind of bugs me. The fact that the battery life on this it's not awful, but it's also not that great. I mean, I would have loved to have seen Dell come up with some sort of like a slate battery, like something that actually attached to the bottom. I mean, they could have put a couple of, you know, reasonably camouflaged, you know, a little rubber stop here so that you could take out for the connection points. Just something. I mean, again, you know, if you're not going to have a removable battery and you're going to force people to sort of only use the battery in it, being able to expand upon that somehow, I think is, for me at least, is really important. So that's something that I really would have preferred to see added on here. You know, again, it's not a gaming laptop, but you know, it can do some basic games. So for some people, this would be fine. But for me, the fact that it has the slower CPU, like it's not a very powerful CPU, the fact that it does not have a very high performance hard drive, and you're also losing out a lot in the storage. The fact that it only has 2 gigs of RAM, for me, I don't think that this is something that I would recommend to most people. If you're aware of the limitations and you still want to go out and buy it, you know, feel free. But I think that, you know, if I had, you know, $1,000, $1,500, I personally would see a lot more value in getting like a Dell 14Z or, you know, an HP laptop that has more RAM, bigger hard drive, and again, a faster processor. Trying to do, you know, video editing or something like that on this with a 1.2 gigahertz processor would be, you know, fairly painful. I did some benchmarking with ProShow Gold, you know, using it to actually create a slideshow. I'll toss up the numbers in post-editing, but the CPU just really did not put out that impressive of numbers, you know, so it just really wasn't that impressive. So this has been Jason Dunn from Digital Home Thoughts. This is again turned into a 22-minute long epic video. Hope you stuck with me throughout all of it if you are interested in this product. If you have any questions, feel free to post them, but let me reiterate, there is no optical drive. Don't ask me about that. I've already talked about gaming, so please don't ask me, can this play such and such a game, because I've already talked about that. Yeah, but if you have any other questions about this product, feel free to let me know. Thanks for watching.